everybody, this is Hua. Welcome back to my YouTube storytelling channel. I'm so happy to have you back here. Today I'm going to read chapter 3 of Tales of a Consort. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
I gave my heart to a stranger. Father, forgive me for it, but I don't want it back. If this pain is what it means to have it, then I'd rather be without it. Gave away my heart to a stranger. If time has been the bow.
Consort Angelina. Desires exist in all of us, even when we are forced to accompany someone we do not wish to. When we come by command and not by choice, our freedom is stripped from us, and we mute our hearts and souls to perform a duty. I had many dreams of a good man that would whisk me away and love me until my hair turned gray. But the world and my father thought differently. When I was arranged into a marriage to the king, my heart had died that day. The bridal veil hid the tears I shed, and each step I took closer to the king's chamber to be delivered to him was a step toward my death. Yes, he took my innocence because he had the right to, and I gave it because I was forced to. My heart remained my own, and although a part of me was envious of the attention he gave the queen, I couldn't blame him entirely. I also gave my heart to another man, and this just wasn't any man, but the man he trusted most in the battlefields. Perhaps I should have been more careful around the halls of this palace because there are ears and eyes everywhere. The queen must have picked up notion that I was having an affair because she had been hinting to me about being unfaithful. But she had the favor of the king no matter what she did or did not do. In his eyes, she was always a fair beauty who could do no wrong. As of late, she had been sending spies to watch me, and I was growing tired of it. But it was not the queen that made my skin crawl. Oh no, it was Consort Summer, the quiet, submissive consort who pretended to be a weakling. I had to watch out for her because she could strike me at any given moment. I had followed the king and found him gifting her an expensive shawl, the shawl I had wanted and had pretended to give in to his desire so I could have. In the end, she'd received it, and he had awakened from my bed to secretly visit the queen without bidding me farewell. But the exchange between us had been noted by the king at breakfast earlier today, and I had to be careful. It was me who had made the first spat, and I couldn't forget that it was my fingers that left the mark on the queen. If he undressed her, he would find it, and I would be given a punishment. Inside my chambers, I removed the last of the day's dress that weighed heavily on my body, and my maid, Victoria, slipped a soft, almost weightless white gown over my body. She began to undo my hair and brush out the tangles. "My lady, should I draw you a bath?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, it is too cold tonight for a bath, but I would like a basin of rose water to clean myself before I sleep." "As you wish, my lady." She finished brushing my hair and walked out to gather the basin for me. When she returned, though, she was not alone, and I looked up to find the king's captain of the guard, Sullivan, was trailing behind her. He was wearing loose-fitting clothes instead of his armor. His handsome face gave me a smile, and I felt my knees weaken. Victoria set the basin down and closed the door after leaving the room. As soon as we were alone, I ran to him, and the kiss we shared sent my toes curling. It had been only 2 days since we last saw each other, but it was much too long. "I have missed you," he whispered into my ear as he ran his hands down my back. "I cannot stand this pain much longer. Each day when I am about the palace hall, my mind runs to you. Where is he tonight?" I smiled and touched his dark hair. He is with Consort Summer. She had an incident earlier today with a man claiming to be her father. Good. This means that I have you for tonight. The many nights we had been sharing a bed had left a surprise in my womb. I was afraid of the king learning, so I had begun to seek his company to make sure he would never doubt anything when my monthly cycle stopped returning. But I had yet to tell Sullivan the truth. I have news for you, I said as I took his hand. I placed it on my belly, and he looked at me with wide eyes. It was quiet in my chambers, as he suddenly moved his hand away from my hold and backed away from me. The reaction made my smile disappear, and when I reached out to touch him, he put his hand up to stop me. How long? He asked. Very early, I assume? I have not had a cycle for a month now. Does the king know? I laughed and walked to sit down on the edge of the bed. I have not told anyone, my lord. Is this why you sought out the king's company? I shot to my feet. What kind of question is that? Rumors have been going around the palace of you becoming the king's favorite consort as of late. Is this your plan? To pass this babe off as his? I rushed to him and touched his cheek, but he shoved me off. I frowned as he prepared to leave. My lord! You cannot ask me to claim this child as yours. It would be our heads for sure. He turned around to glare at me. That child is not of royal blood, and if he sits on the throne one day, it will kill him. Have you not thought of that? The king will have your head in mind if you dare to pass it off as his. What am I supposed to do? Declare this child as yours? Yes, he shouted. Yes. Declare it. We will run away together and live a simple life. I wanted to laugh as I watched his eyes shine with tears. My lord, have you gone mad? If we were to run away, we would be running our entire lives. The royal army would be dispatched to bring back our very heads to the king. I do not have a choice here, and even if I must pretend he is the king's, I will, so he can have a chance to live. He shook his head and walked to me, gripping my shoulders. I cannot allow you to do that, my lady. That child has blood of mine running through his veins, and I cannot stand to watch him be raised with someone else's love and hand. How many times have I told you? You are my woman. If the king is with Consort Summer, let us leave tonight. By the time he finds us, we will be away from the kingdom land. We will find a new life. I shook out of his hold and turned my back toward him. No, I will not raise my child in the wilderness. He will be raised inside the palace walls, where he will know nothing but royalty. But he is not of the king's blood. Will you pretend for the rest of your life? I shut my eyes as tears ran down my cheeks. Yes, I have been pretending long enough. I heard the door open and close, and I began sobbing. I had hoped that once he learned of this news, he would arrange for me to have more care and love. I could not run with him. It was a death sentence for my unborn child, and I loved him too much to grant him such a life. I wanted my child to sit on the throne, to rule, and to have a chance to live royal. I was selfish. I had grown up in a world where everything was handed to me when I asked for it. Except for this marriage of military power, I had everything my way. I was used to being given things, and my heart was a place where I did not need to yearn for anything. Once I came into the palace halls, I learned I had to cower and kneel to people who were higher than me, like the queen. I loathe her, and I loathe the attention the king gave her. It was unfair to marry me into the hall and be invisible. Lowering my heart and knees to someone who did not deserve it set me in a foul mood every single day. I wanted nothing more than to hurt those who didn't need to be a step ahead of me. Sullivan, my dear Sullivan, the moment I laid eyes on him, I had wanted him. He was a brave warrior who bled for the king and protected his people. I desired to be in his arms every day, and seeing him watch me from the corners of the halls made my heart bleed. The secrets that we hid was hard to keep covered, but it had to be done. The queen had figured it out, and I was afraid she would know that the babe inside of me was not the king's. The question that remained in me was what I was going to do to keep my child safe. I had been restless last night, and after Victoria helped dress me and I came down for breakfast, I was surprised to find that the king and consort Summer were missing, and the queen was eating alone. She looked a little pale in the face, and I noticed that she wore a dress that covered higher up to her neck. I took my seat, and the servants began to help me to some food. Good morrow, my queen. Where is the king and consort Summer? I asked. She took a drink of her tea and eyed me with those big eyes of hers. He sent note that he would be helping consort Summer recover in her chambers. She has had quite a fright from the beggars yestereve, but you already knew that. I picked up a piece of bread and slipped it into my mouth when the staleness of it made me want to vomit. I gagged and could not hide the reaction. I took a drink of tea and I noticed the queen's eyes narrow as I forced myself to swallow down the bile threatening to come out. Consort Angelina, are you all right? She asked. Yes, I said a little bit too loud. I am fine, my queen. Was the bread a bit stale? Of course not. Are you implying that the staff does not know how to cook? I would not dare. Be careful. You are treading on very thin ice, and once you break it, the price to pay will be something you cannot afford. I smiled. You speak as if you know something I do not. Oh, I do, she said, smiling. I do. But I have always kept my lips sealed when it comes to matters not of my involving. It is how I managed to remain queen all these years, the elegance the king adores in me. Is that not what you said? The smile on her face made me lose my temper, and I shoved the plate before me onto the ground. The sound of the dishes clattering caused several servants to come running, but Queen Leona stood up and stopped them from picking up the shattered pieces. Consort Angelina, a temperamental breakdown such as yours is not welcomed here. Your sudden outburst tells me that I have touched onto a subject that is quite sensitive to your ears. The servants are not at your fingers to clean up your mistakes. I stood up from where I sat. What do you mean? Get down and pick it up, Queen Leona ordered. I felt my cheeks heat with anger, and I remained sitting where I was. How dare she order me about? Just because she was queen and I was not, it did not mean she could do as she pleased. Emotions got the better of me, and I picked up a piece of the jagged plate, and with a warlike cry, I aimed to throw at her. Stop this instant! King Helion's voice shouted. I dropped it to the ground and leaned onto the table for support as he entered the room. Immediately he inspected the queen, and then he turned his dark eyes to me. The stance he held made me realize how strong of a man he was. The fear rattled inside my ribcage as he walked toward me, never removing his eyes from me. You dare to raise your hand to the queen? He asked. I didn't reply. Answer me! He shouted, and I jumped, falling backward, landing on a chair to break my fall. I whispered. If I had not entered just now, would you have drawn her blood? He asked. She already drew the queen's blood, Consort Summer said as she entered the room with Lily holding her arm. The woman I always knew that was hiding an agenda smiled at me. Speak, King Helion said. Your Majesty, do you notice that the queen is wearing a much thicker dress today? It is to hide the wound that Consort Angelina left on her from yesterday's spat when she so rudely tore the shawl you gifted me. The queen had come to my aid, and her jealousy won over her. I shot to my feet. You speak of riddles. It was not jealousy that won me. The king turned to Queen Leona, and then he walked to her, reaching out his hand to the collar of her dress. She brought her hands to stop him, but he gave her a glare that made her drop her arms. When he unbuttoned it a few notches down, the scratch came into view, and today it had turned an ugly orange. I felt my cheeks flush, and the king buttoned her dress back up before he turned around to face me. Who gave you the right to touch Her Majesty? He asked. I did not mean to, but she came to block me, so you put your hands on her. I stopped and realized I had no way out of it. It was not intentional. Stop, Queen Leona said. Consort Angelina is not at fault for the wound from yestereve. But today's spat is not forgiven, Your Majesty. Please investigate her well, for I fear she may be hiding more than what meets the eye. I felt the anger hit me, and Solomon walked in bearing a basket of fruits. He saw all of us standing, each with an emotion the other had created. Good morrow. Did I miss an invitation to the latest banquet? I rarely see you out with all of the lovely ladies, he said as he handed the basket to one of the servants. Rare occasion indeed, the king replied, and then he turned toward me. You are not to leave your chambers. Until I get to the bottom of this situation, I am reducing your salary by 3 pounds. You can gain it back when I trust you again. Yes, your majesty, I said as tears filled my eyes. I saw Solomon's concerned glance at me, and then he turned to the queen. My queen, are you all right? The question he asked perked my head up to look at him. His eyes told me a gleaming secret that I had missed. No, it could not be. He was not in love with her, was he? Thank you for your concern, Lord Solomon, but I am well. Your Majesty, may I take leave to my chambers? She asked. King Helion took her arm as Penny entered the hall. Penny, make sure Her Majesty gets some rest. Have the kitchen prepare some warm soup for her. I will be back later after I have spoken with Lord Solomon. Yes, Your Majesty, Penny said, as she took the Queen's arm. I watched them leave, and saw that Solomon's eyes also followed them. Then when he turned and met mine, the act that he held made me realize I was a fool for loving a man who was in love with someone else. My heart sank as Solomon asked to be granted leave, and when the king abided, he left without even looking my way. The king waved everyone off, and I hurried to find him, and I was right. He was heading toward the queen's quarters. Reaching for his hand, I began pulling him toward my hall, dragging him almost until we reached the safety of my chambers. How long? I asked. He lifted an eyebrow in questioning. My lady, might I have more than just that simple question? Laughing, I replied, My lord, it is not just a simple question, is it? How long have you been secretly desiring the queen? As I thought, his face paled, and his eyes darkened, answering my question with his silence. My heart nearly dropped, and I turned away, my eyes filled with hot tears. When I turned back around, he had replaced his horror with a look I could not read. My lord, I have fought for the right to share the king's bed. Now must I fight for yours too? He crossed his arms. Have I ever shared the queen's bed? How should I know? Exactly. If you had known, I would be a bloody mess of death by now. No matter if I desire her or not, I would never dare lay a finger on her. She is but an image of perfection I keep close to my heart. An image of perfection? What image? The perfect woman, he shouted. The king knows it. I know it. The whole world knows it. You cannot simply ask me to remove this image from my mind when it has been engraved so deeply. I cannot have her. I know it, but I can have you. So I will take what I can. The pain struck me hard. Am I an easy woman to invite to your bed? Is that how you see me? He let his arms drop. Of course not. But you are someone the king does not hold as dear as her. Even if I were to be caught, the affair would go silent as long as I do not utter a word about it. The king could forgive me, but the queen is someone he would never allow another man to touch. Why do you think he makes her wear the materials she does? So if anyone were to touch her, the imprint of their fingers could be found easily by him. I lost my balance and fell to the ground. So that was why she always wore the materials that stained easily. Her gowns were exquisitely designed and came with materials that were never given to either me or Consort Summer. I felt like a fool as I looked up at him. I have lost to her in so many ways, my lord. I have never been given anything kind in my life. I am always last, and I am always something someone gives up easily. Am I to settle for less all my life? He walked to me and knelt down. My lady, the truth is that you will never measure up to the queen. She has the ability to own a room when she walks in, and her beauty is unmatched of anyone in this kingdom. All the men secretly desire her, not just me, but we will never touch her, for fear of losing our heads. Do you think you are the only woman in this kingdom who secretly despises her? She has gained the attention of all of their husbands, so she is most hated, but yet she carries a demeanor that continues to cast a shine. That is how she was always ahead and how you never will be. I reached over and slapped him across the face. He took both my hands in his and jerked me toward him. The pain shot through my body. You dare to make a fool of yourself again, he whispered. I am carrying the king's child. If you harm me, I shall tell the king everything. He laughed. Do not make petty threats to me, Consort Angelina. You are carrying my child, not the king's. How do you think he will react if he should learn you have been climbing into my bedchambers? Do you think he will save you just because you are one of his consorts? He can have another just like you, perhaps even better, to replace you when he's grown tired of you. Do you know what will happen to you then? I did not answer, as his eyes darkened and the fear in me rose high. You, he continued, will succumb to be in his alleys, searching for leftover food that even a rat would not consume. Be careful, my lady, for that life has been granted to many consorts before you. He shoved me off and left the chamber as I gathered myself together and stood up. My heart was pounding, and I thought back to the events leading up to this moment. I was exhausted of being put on the back burner and forgotten. I would prove once and for all that I was queen material and that the one sitting at the throne should be me. Thank you for tuning in. Part 4 will be out shortly.